everybody, Vermont Prepper. I'm on my way back from Florida. I just got on the New York Thruway, and right now you see the time. It is 4:15 a.m. Been driving through the night. It's pretty brutal. Had some nasty fog, but I think I punched through it. Hopefully 87 won't have nearly the same amount of fog as it did on Route 81 in Pennsylvania. But I got to thinking about some things as I was driving. I wanted to share them. Basically, I read an article about 2 days ago, Blaze TV, and it had to do with a follow-up of the New Jersey magazine ban, where they banned magazines for weapons that have over 10 rounds in it. And this article did a follow-up as to how many magazines were actually turned in, because in New Jersey this law went into effect. There's no grandfathering or anything. I think it was in June or July it went into effect. There's no grandfathering. They didn't give you any remuneration for the magazines. You just had to turn them in. So no, I think if I read the article correctly, no magazines at all have been turned in. So basically what you're seeing is non-compliance of this law, which of course unconstitutional, granted, but what it does is it's creating a lot of people to be criminals in the eyes of the law. Now, and I've said this before, Americans have very strong feeling on the Second Amendment, one way or the other. I mean, they're either, there's really no in between. They either want it fully or they don't. And the ones that do want the Second Amendment to stay intact, a lot of them will not comply with these kinds of laws that they feel are unconstitutional. It's not a good thing all around, because if you think about it, you have people, maybe they're 40, 50 years old, no records, not even traffic ticket, and now they are forced to turn in these magazines, which they spent a lot of money on, right? They probably have maybe 5 or so at the minimum, and probably hundreds to the maximum magazines that they bought, and at between $15 to $25 a pop, it adds up. So, and I don't think remuneration would even be the issue, really. I just think it's a matter of them feeling very strongly about the Second Amendment and the right to defend themselves. I don't think remuneration would have made a difference, quite frankly. So what you're seeing around the country is non-compliance. Vermont did something similar, but they actually grandfathered magazines that you already had. So in Vermont, it took probably about 6 months before the Rhino Governor Phil Scott signed the law to the time that it actually went into effect. And what that did is create an influx during that time frame, that lull between the signing and when it went into effect. People were buying magazines back and like they were going out of style, like mortgaging houses or whatever, getting loans, putting it on credit. I mean, so what that law did, another stupid law, is it probably generated another 1 million or so magazines in the state of Vermont. So it did the exact opposite of what they thought it should do, okay? So these laws, they can do all they want, but Americans will not be disarmed. That's just the way it is. It's society. They just feel very, very strongly about this, and that's why there's 300 million plus weapons in the United States. So, and not only does it put the gun owner or weapon owner in a situation, but it also unfairly puts law enforcement in a situation as well. They have to go enforce these laws somehow, and I don't know how they're going to enforce this in New Jersey. I think they'll probably just look for someone. If someone happens to commit a crime and they happen to find some guns, they'll prosecute them, or some magazines that have over 10 rounds, they'll prosecute them. But are they going to go door to door? I know people were saying that, yeah, they're not ruling out anything, but realistically, come on, guys. Again, that's a little bit too much hysteria. And again, I've said this before: hysteria on both sides of the issue. So, realistically, law enforcement has to look at how they're going to enforce the law, right? In the case of Vermont, you have, Magpul has date stamps on their magazines, so that's easily found out. Like, okay, did you have the magazine? Does the magazine date predate the law of when it went into effect, or is it after? If it's after, and they find out, hey, you're in trouble. I think it's a misdemeanor, and you get a fine in Vermont. I don't think it's a felony. But still, who wants that on their record? Nobody's going to hire you. Nobody wants to hire somebody with a criminal record. So that's what's happening not only in New Jersey and in Vermont, but you're seeing non-compliance in Colorado. I think Boulder had some kind of either weapon and or magazine ban, and you're having people openly display their weapons on the street after the ordinance went into effect, and they are openly non-complying. So think about that. That's even more radical. So Colorado, non-compliance. California, that's probably the state with the most gun laws. That and the two communist states, California and New York, probably have the most, and then followed by, or maybe even Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, all ruled by socialist governments. So you're seeing all these laws getting put into place with no way to enforce them. So why put these laws into place when you can't enforce them? It doesn't make sense, people. These lawmakers have this righteous feeling of wanting to put something into place to show that they're anti-gun, they're trying to stem gun violence. I get it. I understand. No law-abiding citizen wants gun violence, all right? And I've said this over and over. You got to focus on the mental issue aspect. If you see something, say something. I really believe in that. But the mental issue thing, if somebody's bipolar, or if they're schizophrenic, or some other kind of mental disorder which causes them not to rationalize properly, if they're diagnosed, and this is where the problem comes in. You have to diagnose them, and people feel that you got to have due process. Me personally, if a doctor diagnoses somebody with one of those issues, mental diseases, they shouldn't have guns. Okay, I'm sorry, because that's where these issues are happening. You're seeing this in in that movie theater in Aurora, Colorado, where the guy shot up the theater. He was basically schizophrenic. You see the one in Connecticut where he shot up all the kids. That kid was crazy. He shot his mother. Parkland, there were signs that this guy was crazy too, this kid, where he went in there and shot all the kids. It's mental mental health, people. That's what the bottom line is. You have to really distinguish law-abiding citizens from those who are mentally ill, that acquire weapons and go out and shoot people. That's basically it. There's really no real rocket science behind this, guys. It's mental health. And I think any regular law-abiding gun owner would agree that somebody with a mental issue such as schizophrenia or bipolar or maybe even some forms of depression should not have a weapon, because you don't know what they're going to do with it. They might hurt not only other people, but they hurt themselves as well, those with depression. So you're going to see a lot more legislation this year with the Democrats being in power. We've already started seeing some, even from Trump, with the ban on bump stocks. And again, you're not going to get compliance on that either. That's already been challenged in court. We'll see what happens there, but people just aren't going to comply with it, because it's not even that fact that they really want to have that bump stock. That has nothing to do with it, really. It's the fact that the government is infringing on their Second Amendment. They feel that if they want to have it, that's their right to have it. It's unconstitutional for the government to take it away, especially without remuneration. Okay, it's basically it. So I mean, that particular law has a chance of being overturned. Whether or not it will, who knows? And if it stays in effect, really not going to affect the majority of gun owners. There's really not that many of them. Maybe I think there was an estimate of 500,000 to 1 million at most. But you're turning those people again into criminals, the ones that own them, because they're not complying. So really not well thought out laws that are happening. And everyone knows the whole argument. You see Chicago, that has some of the strictest gun laws in the country. It's like a free-for-all over there. You don't have the gangs that are complying with that, so why should you take them away from law-abiding citizens? The gangs are still going to get them. Same in California. They're nutty to begin with, and you have all of these gun laws, and you still have people shooting up each other over there. You have the again, mental health, an Army veteran who went in and shot up people inside of a bar. It's mental health, people. When are we going to get this through our head? The challenge with that is that you don't want somebody to just go around and say, oh, he's exhibiting schizophrenia symptoms, and, just so that, maybe somebody's spiteful. Maybe you have an ex-spouse who is accusing people, so you have, the extreme protection where they're taking away the guns due to accusations rather than due process. I believe in due process, so I really feel that someone should be diagnosed before law enforcement goes to take their weapons. And to get diagnosed, somebody has to say something, and they have to be examined. These people have to be examined. I don't think you could just go in there and just take some weapons based on accusations. It's not fair. You have to have the due process, but that is the road toward reducing these large-scale mass killings. I mean, it's sickening what's happening in the United States with that. Again, no gun-owning, law-abiding citizen wants that to happen. In fact, if they had guns in those schools or in the theater or wherever, you might have had less of a casualty count. I do believe in armed teachers, should they want to be, as volunteers, not forced. I believe in training. But again, my opinion only. We'll see what happens as the year goes on. It's going to be interesting. Vermont, they have a supermajority now, so they can introduce and pass any legislation they want. We'll see what happens. The Democrats that got in Vermont that have this supermajority, they're all funded by anti-gun movements. So I would imagine that you're going to have a lot more restrictive laws in Vermont in the coming years. Again, very simple. You want to affect change, people, you go out and vote. You don't go out and destroy property. And I mean this from both sides. You have the Antifa on one side, and you have other right-wing movements that mask themselves behind the flag, saying how patriotic they are, but yet they're intimidating the left, and they're looking for fights. Maybe they're not starting it, but they're certainly looking for fights by showing up in numbers and intimidating with, their firearms on their shoulder backs or whatever, like they're really tough. Stupid. So go out and vote if you want to really affect change. That's what America's about. All right? Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, or comment. And hope to see some comments that do not agree with my views. Take care, everybody. Vermont Prepper out, and as always, keep prepping.